Good evening, everyone. So we are on the eve of the Republican National Convention, which I said I was going to watch because I just feel like I need to know both sides of the aisle and just understand, exactly what's going on in the Republican Party. Not that I agree with them in any way, shape, or form, but it's good to be informed, to play the devil's advocate, to be well informed, to just be able to speak about it. So I'm going to actually watch it. It hasn't started yet, but I'm going to be watching it tonight. So basically, I just wanted to say also, we are also dealing with a death of another unarmed black man in America. Shot 7 times in the back, unarmed, while his kids were watching, trying to defuse a domestic dispute. Okay? It's very interesting because when you watch the video, which I do, I tend to do, not because I lack empathy or not because I like to be, I like to watch these things over and over again. I just like to see exactly what do these cops actually possess that make them feel emboldened, right, to then shoot someone, take a life, or harm another person. It's interesting because even in the midst of this pandemic, even in the midst of unarmed black men and women being killed over the last few months, and if you want to say over the last few years, why do they still feel that it's necessary to shoot someone like this? So I spent my weekend also, mulling over several documentaries. The first one is Reversing Roe, which everyone should watch. It's on Netflix. The Great Hack, which is also very awe-inspiring and interesting and really sheds a light on how we ended up with this president in the first place, and Get Me Roger Stone. Okay, so when we speak about the Republican Party specifically, let's look back in history. Every Republican president in modern history has had some type of a scandal as how they made their way to the presidency. Okay, we saw it with George W. Bush. We saw it with George H.W. Bush, and we saw it with Ronald Reagan. And all three of those presidents have one person in common, and that's Roger Stone. Look back, research who Roger Stone is, what he stands for, and how exactly he made his way into politics to begin with. He was a very avid consumer of Republican presidents, with Richard Nixon being his guru, right? He has Richard Nixon tattoo on his back. We all know what Richard Nixon did and how he ended up in leaving office. He wasn't impeached, he resigned because of Watergate. So we just see the actual scandal, and we see the actual, corruption in this party that makes us all want to should make us all want to question exactly what are their motives, what are they trying to do to this country in the sense of, democracy and policy and politics. We want to ask ourselves those questions, and I'm not saying that the Democratic Party is stellar and they haven't had their share of scandals, but we have to look at how progressive the party has been. All of the progressive movements have been made under the Democratic Party, right? And I have conversations a lot about Republicans versus Democrats. But I just want to say, when we speak about Democrats in specifics, we want to speak about what they actually did for this country. And I said this in my previous video. To get to a point and level in politics, there is a dirty game you have to play. And I'm never going to stand shy of that. I'm never going to step away from that because it's the truth. But the real issue is here. Why isn't the Republican Party speaking out about these injustices in this country in the same way that the Democratic Party is speaking out about them? Why aren't they the ones that are meeting with families of slain black and brown men and women? Why aren't they implementing policies? They hold the power right now in the Senate and in the executive branch. Why aren't they putting out policies about this? I know we are in the middle of a pandemic and that takes precedence, but every other day or every other week, month, whatever, we're hearing about another black person, whether they be female or male, that are dying at the hands of this country and their policing. So I urge you all to do research again. I urge you all to get involved. I urge you all to look at both candidates and specifically what they are doing for our country and how, in fact, they are, leading the way in progressivism and making this country look like the people that actually live here, or are they trying to, take away legislation and policy that has gotten us to this point? The Republican Party is arguably noted for taking financial backing, for holding the interest of monetary gains, for the 1% of corporations versus the people. And that can be researched. That's happened over decades, right? And they also don't have a very progressive movement in their own party. They don't look like how the Democrats look as far as progressiveness is concerned. Now, again, I say the Democrats are not perfect. There are a lot of old Democrats in this party that will continue to push their own narratives and continue to stifle the growth of the party for their own reasons and their own gains. But in comparison to the Republican Party, there hasn't been in decades any progressive movement towards making legislative bodies and executive bodies look like how the country looks. And that's a fact. So with that being said, going back to these slain black lives that have lost their lives at the hands of police, we say their names: Jacob Blake, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland. We say their names, but where's that getting us? We can hashtag them. We can place murals on the ground. We can march and we can protest. But if we aren't holding these elected officials responsible to enact change, then really, what are we doing? Are we going to continue to see more of this happening? Are we moving into a policing type of state, an authoritative type of government? Or are we going to keep our democracy in November? So I urge everyone to go out there and make an informed decision and vote, because if we don't, then how can we complain again, right? How can we complain? We have to continue to do our research, and we have to continue to dig deep into all of these candidates. And none of them are perfect. I'm not going to sit here and say that they are perfect in any way, shape, or form, but we need to hold them accountable. But I also don't think that it's a perfect time to gamble with this election, right? I don't think this is the best time to say, well, these Democratic leaders, they don't support the black agenda and they don't support, what black people are standing for, and how come they have such a corrupt past and X, Y, and Z. If we're going to do that, then let's hold the Republican Party responsible the same way. And let's look at the policies and the type of people that they put in place and research them as well, and research their backgrounds and who's involved in this party, right? Because if we don't do that, and we scrutinize the Democratic Party and we don't scrutinize the Republican Party in the same way, this is what we end up with. Two parties, one which we have, discriminated against, discredited, and one party who we just say, oh, we're not going to even look into that because we won't support that anyway. And then they win another 4 years. And in doing that, could be detrimental to any type of aggressiveness in this country. The goal here is to make our country look like our elected officials. It's important to vote, but it's also equally important to hold these people accountable for the promises that they made, whether they be Republican or whether they be Democratic. We have to hold them accountable. We have to push for change. We have to petition. We have to protest. We cannot allow them to take away our rights as citizens. So I hope everyone who has a chance can get involved and if you want to, watch the Republican National Convention just the same as you watch the Democratic National Convention, just to get 2 pictures of what America will look like if we get another 4 years of Donald Trump versus another 4 years of Joe Biden.